welcome to Digital Now and Next, a web series that looks at the evolving digital landscape. It looks at how to plan effectively within this landscape, and it looks at the upcoming trends that will impact planning into 2024. And up first is gaming, where we look at the untapped gaming landscape and the opportunities within this market. And I'm now going to pass you on to Meave and Aileen, who will take you through today's webinar.
So we wanted to kick off today's webinar by telling a story. And this is the story of a campaign that Pringles did where they brought Frank, a virtual character, into the real world, engaged him with a gaming community and delivered real business results. So how did they do that? Well, they kicked off the campaign with a streamer called Leah. Leah is a streamer, she's a Twitch ambassador, she games every single night. Today she starts streaming West of Dead, a zombie cowboy game. She's interacting with her audience, she pops open a packet of Pringles, and all of a sudden one of the zombies from the game reaches his arm through the game and joins her in her streaming bedroom. He starts streaming with her, he's playing the game, and her audience are interacting with him. Now this is obviously a marketing activation. It's done really credibly, it's done well, her audience love it. They're interacting a huge amount, and because of that, it becomes one of the top 10 global streams of the evening. Frank's journey isn't done there. He then starts tweeting from the Pringles UK Twitter platform. He creates an in-game scavenger hunt, and he starts meeting and engaging with streamers all over the world. All of this creating a huge amount of earned media for the Pringles brand. Once he's done with us in the real world, he goes back into his virtual world. Here, his character has a couple of new traits in that he's eating Pringles. What's great about this story and this campaign is Pringles took a flesh-eating cowboy zombie. They made him fall in love with a gaming community, win their hearts and minds in a credible and authentic manner, and from that delivered real business results. Putting that in perspective, Pringles are outspent 2-1 by their nearest competitor. However, from this activation, they delivered a 25% increase in their sales year on year. So what are we here today to talk about? Well, it's really to leverage the power of gaming to drive real business results. In a world where we're seeing increased media fragmentation, where we're all heroically fighting that battle of attention, where we're losing eyeballs from a younger audience on linear TV, and where our audiences are just becoming that little bit more discerning of advertising, we as advertisers and brand managers need to start thinking about how we can look to new innovative solutions to deliver real business results. From that's why we think gaming is so powerful, because it provides access to new audiences, new platforms, new ecosystems, and actually a new economy to build out, launch, and connect our brands. So today, our whole presentation is going to be looking at where we are in the gaming market at the moment, around now, the impact that that's going to have on our advertising campaigns, and what are the next steps that we can do in order to really take the true value of gaming into our business campaigns. So now is all about the context on market, the gaming audience itself. In order to discuss now, the first thing that we want to do is just chat about the difference between gaming and esports. As we all know, gaming refers to playing that electronic games across consoles, devices, mobile phones. Really what esports is it is the umbrella term that speaks about doing gaming in a competitive environment. This can either be online or it can be in real life. So with that, esports and gaming combined is actually the fastest growing entertainment category. And what's super interesting is that category is outpacing Hollywood and the music industries combined. With that in mind, the revenue that the industry is bringing in 2022 was 1.4 billion. That it was set to quadruple by the end of the decade. So then it's no surprise that esports competition purses are outpacing those of traditional sports tournaments. What I mean by that is the Dota International competition purse was more than that of Wimbledon. Putting that into context, what we're seeing now is a whole new area of wealth, a new fandom, new stardom, and obviously new advertising opportunities on a much bigger scale. So it's of absolute no surprise that the likes of Netflix have come out and they've said we compete with the likes of Fortnite more so than HBO. The thing is, though, I think for us as Irish marketers, a lot of this can be very international or feel quite global. So what does that mean for us on an Irish level? Looking at this and looking back over the last year, what we have seen is great momentum in the Irish market, from MEP Maria Walsh calling out to the state to create a long-term strategy where we can invest and fund the sector, to esports academy being created by Wild Academy in Cork, and also, of course, where Riot Games have put huge funding into creating an esports broadcasting centre, part of their Project Striker initiative. Then even more so, also in that, is we have talent. We have Jordan Crowley playing and representing Ireland on an international scale. We have brands like Munster Rugby seeing the importance of esports and creating their own esports team. And then we also have big name brands like McDonald's investing in sponsorships and activations and events like Gamerfest. The growth of gaming really is impinging on that we have eyeballs, and in Ireland we do. We have a huge audience of active gamers, and Aileen's now going to talk to us about that.
So this is a really large audience of gamers in Ireland. 1.1 million adults are gaming on a regular basis. To put that into context, that's equitable to the Rugby World Cup games where Ireland have been playing in terms of viewership on TV. They're also not all male, as you might perceive. There are 36% female gamers active on a monthly basis as well. And they're not all the same. They're doing different things online and they're accessing their games via different devices and different platforms. They're mostly gaming on their smartphone, but there are console gamers in here as well, which may be the initial perception you would have, but it is varied across the devices, across the different audiences, because they are quite different in their approaches to gaming online. You've got the casual gamer, so they're more into the downtime where they're infrequently accessing games online. It's the likes of Wordle or Candy Crush, where they're not spending an awful lot of time committed to gaming, but they're doing so infrequently as well. You have the achievement-based gamers. Now, this is more aligned to a lot of our probably preconceptions about gamers, the person in the basement with the headphones on. They're very much into the games and the gaming community that comes with it. They do a lot of downloadable content, DLC. They love that, adding on to the games when they've purchased after the fact, expanding the game experience and doing microtransactions where they buy items within the gaming environment as well. And finally, you've got the socially driven gamers. This is where you have groups of people coming together, thinking of your Friday night poker games where you have chat functionality and people able to converse whilst they're gaming online. So we need to keep this in mind when we're thinking about advertising and communicating to these different cohorts online. And they're a digital first cohort. They prefer digital media over physical media, with 94% of them being very active social media users. They are seen on the likes of the meta platforms such as Facebook and Instagram. No surprise there that you can reach a lot of that audience there, but they do also over-index on Reddit and Snapchat. So there's definitely interesting opportunities to reach them on those platforms as well. And it's also interesting to look at where they consume video, because they are heavy video streamers online. But when we look at where they're consuming that video, an interesting story starts to emerge. So what you can see here is that 4 out of 6 of the top viewing sites for this audience are non-ad funded in Ireland. So you cannot advertise on the majority of these access points for this audience. So the point here is that they are a harder to reach audience. That's also compounded by the fact that 46% of gamers have ad blockers and use ad blockers as standard. So this is one of the challenges we're going to talk about, how gaming can become a solution to resolve from a behavioural point of view. So the first of these challenges is a behavioural challenge that we're seeing within the industry, that the younger audiences are becoming harder to reach. We know and we've seen that linear TV has been declining in terms of consumption, particularly for a younger audience, seeing it year to date decline by 18% year on year. So that's something we definitely need to be mindful of. The next challenge that we have, again from a behavioural point of view, is that social media has exploded in recent years. However, the behaviour that we have within these platforms is meaning that we're spending less attention with the advertising formats that there are. We're being conditioned to scroll, to not have a lot of time to actually engage in the content. Now, we do have solutions for that with our next webinar that's coming up focused on social, but today we're going to talk about how gaming is an antidote to this as well. Third is a challenge, but it's more of a misconception, that marketing via gaming is difficult. We're seeing that in Ireland, we're not getting a lot of engagement from the indigenous local brands. We're seeing on a global scale that the international brands are getting involved, but certainly in Ireland there's definitely more opportunity here. And finally, another misconception here is that gamers are not receptive to ads. I have mentioned already that there's 46% of them using ad blockers, so you can be forgiven for thinking this is the case, but actually if you engage in the right way, there's a lot of potential here. And that's why we're here today, because gaming can provide some solutions to these challenges and misconceptions. When we were talking earlier about this harder to reach audience, we can see that from a Gen Z perspective, 56% of this audience is gaming on a regular basis. When you look at the 25 to 34 audience, there's 43% of that audience gaming as well. So it's not just a youth audience we're talking about here. We're able to target this audience through our performance teams and our practice here in Core by behaviourally targeting online. But we can also look at occasions and opportunities to engage with this audience before they start their gaming experience. So we can actually target via the PlayStation and the Xbox on the big screen. There's 180,000 streams available on a monthly basis to really engage with this audience on that higher level. And the second challenge that gaming can resolve for is around attention. I'm sure many of you are aware of the Lumen research in this area, and what they have found is that in-game advertisements have 98% viewability. That is an enormous figure, especially when you compare it to the digital norm of 78%. So what you have here is a really attentive audience. What you also have to bear in mind is that they're single screening and they're extremely focused on the task at hand. So that gives you ingredients for a real opportunity to cut through. And there's a real opportunity for brands to engage on a deep level here. What you see here is McCain's Frozen Foods engaging in Roblox, a virtual experience targeted at a youth audience, really talking about the positives of sustainable farming. And if you think about it, if a frozen food brand can get involved and get engaged on a deeper level, so can you. Another really rich opportunity is to do product placement within the gaming environment. This example here is where Mercedes-Benz gave the game players the opportunity for some DLC that I mentioned earlier, the downloadable content, to be able to use the Mercedes-Benz car within the Mario 8. So they were able to zoom around the kart track in a Mercedes-Benz, really giving that rich experience. These examples I've showed you here, they are a lot of commitment involved. There's a lot of time and budget potentially in areas, but it doesn't have to be that complex, does it, Maeve?
Absolutely, and that's what brings us on to our third challenge or misconception, that actually marketing via gaming is difficult. And what you can see, and as you can see here, is that there's in-game advertising that have quite low barrier to entries. Here, all we need as a marketers is some kind of branding toolkit or display ads. We'll use tech partners like FramePlay or BidStack to upload these creatives, and they'll render quite naturally and organically into the game. They'll give really strong metrics for viewability to dwell time. And actually what's great here is that all ad standard and brand safety tools that we use in all other media are applied into this format also. And here you can see a little bit more of a local example that's been done by McDonald's Monopoly game, where they took over the courts of Wimbledon and then aligned it back to a physical voucher. So moving on to our fourth and final challenge. This is kind of the misconception that gamers are not receptive to ads. And although they are a little bit more of a discerning cohort, they do understand advertising a little bit better. Done correctly, gamers can be an absolutely incredibly lucrative audience. And we've seen that through the Pringles case study that we showed earlier. I think what's really, really special about gaming is the communities that they create. We have streamers that build communities, they create shared experiences, and the biggest thing there is they can be used to really build and deliver on social proof, delivering on those salience metrics that we really, really need in our advertising. One of the key areas that we see as a window into the gaming audience is through our content creators and our streamers. There's been loads of studies done that showcases the power of a gaming creator, and I think we can all see that as well when we're using social creators and influencers in our campaigns to date. Gaming creators are no different, and sometimes actually can have even more value because they're creating these audiences. Within Ireland, we have some fantastic gaming creators from the likes and the original of Jacksepticeye, who has over 30 million followers on YouTube. There's the Irish Lads, which are a trio that run YouTube, and I would actually recommend that you go onto these cohorts and look at them. The best news is that it's not all lads. What we're after seeing now is a real rise in the addition of female gaming influencers. Three up on screen here, from Psych, Aoife Wilson to catastrophical, I'll say that correctly, who has over 1.1 million followers on TikTok and games in real life every single day. So, returning to those 4 misconceptions and challenges that we spoke about. First and foremost, that harder to reach audience. Actually, gaming provides that solution, getting new eyeballs on those Gen Z audiences that we're not finding anywhere else. When it comes to lower attention, what we're finding is that within gaming, we have that much higher attentive reach in those platforms. Gaming is difficult. What we're seeing is that actually the barriers to entry can be quite low. There's lots of different ways that we can enter. So just come and chat to us. In-game ads are a really, really good way to do that. And gamers aren't receptive to audiences or aren't receptive to ads. Actually, what we're seeing is they're a hugely loyal audience once we treat them correctly. And that can be highly lucrative for us. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to just chat about how to start creating that gaming strategy for you. And really what we can kind of see is we'd recommend 2 phases or 2 different elements that you could do. The first thing you can do is you can look at your media plan and see how you can find that gaming audience and supercharge your comms to them. So that's really that contextual relevant ad that you're placing. The second thing you can do is a bit more, you have to be a little bit more involved, and that's where we create a complete strategy with engagement. So we're looking at all of the different elements within the gaming ecosystem, looking at the nuances of how we interconnect and connect our brands and how we can grow our brand through a real gaming strategy. If we're going to do that though, what we have to start thinking about is how we live on each platform and how we interact. Looking back to that Pringles case study, what made it really, really successful was it was authentic, it was relevant to the audience that they were connecting with, it added value, it added comedy, it added an entertainment element, and it supported the community in which it involved. Taking all of these elements is what will bring you into the next area of gaming for you. So, taking you just through a summary of what we've discussed today. First, it was the now and how we looked at an absolutely untapped market and opportunity within gaming. We then looked at the impact of that and how we can use gaming to cut through without any huge commitment. And finally, how we're then going to start making choices about how we're going to use gaming in our campaigns going forward. So is that going to be a supercharged media plan or a much more engaging gaming strategy that engages on a much deeper level? So for today, that's all from us. So I'll have to say game over.
Thanks to Meave and Aileen for today's presentation. Your planning teams will be in touch around upcoming gaming opportunities. And a massive thanks to you guys for tuning in today.